You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. Today I have some terrific guests. With all the controversy over the Oscars, well-deserved, and over Hollywood's sexism and racism, the Women's Media Center has just released a report on what goes on behind the scenes and where the power really lies and the racism and sexism there. That's where we start out with my first guest. Then we move on to health for brains, in particular women's brains, but men need the help probably more than women. Certainly the GOP contenders for the Republican nomination should listen to this segment, but I don't think they're listening to this program. In any event, brain health and health for the rest of oneself and wellness is our middle segment, and we are closing with a special treat for those of you who love words, the English language, good writing, and in fact, if you don't, this segment will make you into somebody who loves words, the English language, and writing. It's quite delectable. So stay tuned, but before we go any of those places, we need to go inside the headlines. Inside the headlines, we are busy back fighting for a womb of our own. The Zika virus, which of course is wreaking havoc across South and Latin America, has made the World Health Organization issue a strong call for the use of contraception in countries where the mosquito that carries the virus has been spotted, and WHO said that women who had unprotected sex and feared infection should have access to emergency contraception, which is a recommendation that will not particularly sit well with the Roman Catholic Church, and most of these countries are Roman Catholic. But the Pope weighed in, and surprisingly, and with a welcome statement, didn't go far enough, but it went somewhere, saying that that contraceptives could be used to prevent the spread of Zika, which, by the way, as you may know, researchers have linked to a spike in cases of babies born with severe brain damage. The Pope's remarks he made midair. This is when he usually is actually honest for a moment. On the way back from his trip to Mexico, on the way back to Rome in the plane, he had a press conference, and he ruled out condoning abortion, of course, which he called a crime, an absolute evil. But he did seem open to making an exception for contraception, and he cited Pope Paul VI's decision in the 1960s, which was to make an emergency exception to permit nuns in the Belgian Congo to use contraceptives because they were in danger of rape. Avoiding pregnancy, Francis said, is not an absolute evil. Well, first of all, I don't know about you, but I was very surprised and interested to learn that Pope Paul VI they kept this one pretty quiet, made an emergency exception so that nuns could be using contraceptives because they were in danger of rape. How very interesting. And how when it's needed for the sake of the church, somehow then it's what was not acceptable is acceptable. It's just convoluted, fascinating logic. But at least Francis has now extended that. And then there's the question of emergency contraception, which is in effect the next day, the morning after pill. So this is good news, I think, in general, particularly for Catholics. And of course, many Latin American and South American Catholics have been ignoring the church on this issue anyway. Back up in North America, where we're being protected from ourselves because, women are incapable of doing that, on March 2nd, the Supreme Court, brace yourself, will hear a challenge to the Texas law, which is the Women's Protection Project, a bill called the Women's Health Protection Act and the Women's Health Defense Act, because the right wing, after decades of fighting for the life of the fetus, the Friends of the Fetus, they've now started arguing that it's for the sake of the women seeking abortions, to protect our health and our safety, that the state has to impose strict new regulations on clinics. Every medical expert has said these regulations are unnecessary and crazy and have nothing to do with, in fact, safety or the health of patients. But the estimated cost of renovating an existing clinic is $1.5 million to $3 million, so it has been driving clinics out of business. So the Supreme Court on the 2nd will hear, with its 8-person court at the moment, will hear a challenge to the Texas law. Whole Women's Health, which operates 4 clinics in the state, has brought the lawsuit, arguing that Texas's stated goal of protecting women is a cover, which it is, for closing clinics, and that the law has no genuine, authentic medical purposes. Instead, it does impose, this law, a, quote, undue burden, which is the Supreme Court's constitutional test, on women's right to reproductive care, because, in fact, we do now have a right to abortion. If the Texas restrictions are allowed to go fully into effect, the number of abortion clinics in the state of Texas is projected to drop to 8 or 9 from 44 3 years ago, and that's across 270,000 square miles. And more than 20 states have enacted laws with some or all of the Texas restrictions. So this is a really important court decision, which might, unless Justice Kennedy decides to do the right thing, it might end up with a split court and go back then, be bumped right back to Texas and to the appellate courts. I am always reminded when they talk about protecting us of a wonderful quote of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who said in a speech years ago, "Having grown up in years when women, by law or custom, were protected from a range of occupations, including lawyering, and from serving on juries, I am instinctively suspicious of women-only protective legislation." Just get out of protecting us. We'll do it ourselves. Thank you very much. And now for my first guest. With all the controversy swirling over the Oscars being so white in the nominations for acting categories, it's important to look at what also goes on behind the scenes, which we know is racist and sexist. So it's a fortuitous time for the Women's Media Center to have released a 10-year review of Oscar nominations in non-acting categories with a look at gender. And the editor of that report and the editor of the features on the Women's Media Center website is Barbara Findlen, who is with us today. Barb, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's like old home week. It's so good to have you here. Listeners, Barbara Findlen and I are old colleagues from Ms. Magazine and activism and years of on the barricades together, although she's much younger than I. And she is now, of course, the not only the editor of the features on the Women's Media Center website, as I said in the intro, but she is the editor of the 10-year review of Oscar nominations in gender. Congratulations on this, by the way, because it has had such wonderful pickup. It's been cited by Variety and Hollywood Reporter and Vanity Fair and Newsweek and Huffington Post and, internationally, on and on. So people are actually listening to some sensible research that you oversaw.
Exactly. And I think it shows that people really want this information. And these are numerical facts and analysis that underlie a lot of the activism and advocacy that's happening around women in Hollywood.
Right. Well, and also what I think are so important about this 10-year review of Oscar nominations in gender is, everybody knows because of the coverage of the appalling lack of people of color, and for that matter, women in particular, in Oscar nominations for acting, because that's visible. So this year there's, Oscars, #Oscars so white and #Oscars so male. But the interesting thing to me about this report is that it is not about the acting nominations. It's about all the rest. It's about what takes place behind the scenes where the decision-making power is. And that, of course, affects everything about the industry. The one stat that just blew me away was in cinematography category. It has maintained a 100% shutout of female nominees in the entire 88-year history of the awards. That's
yes, not just in the last 10 years, which we focused on, but
ever
throughout the history of the Academy Awards.
ever.
Yeah.
Wow, wow, wow. Well, tell
That
us
is very significant.
tell us some of the other bad news, and by all means, if there's any good news, lay it on us.
Sure, and as you pointed out, we focused on non-acting nominations because in the 4 acting categories, as we know, they're designated for male and female. And there's one other category for foreign language film, which is technically awarded to the country of origin, so we didn't do that one. So
Right.
we analyzed all Oscar nominations for the remaining 19 categories over 10 years. And the overall picture is that women were 19% of all non-acting nominations.
Only
And
19%. My
Only
God.
19% in over a range of all 19 categories, from directing to cinematography to sound editing, sound mixing, all the other categories.
Writing, even. I mean, everything.
Writing, women were only 13% of writing.
Oh, as a writer, that gives me agita.
Yes, exactly. And one of the things that we point out in the report that we did looks at the numbers, but also does a little bit of analysis and delves into what's behind the numbers. And one of the things we point out is that often with the adapted screenplay category, men throughout history have been the writers who have adapted women's plays and novels.
Huh. That was a cynical ha.
Yeah, I know.
Ha.
So in the what we refer to as top tier categories, producing and directing and cinematography and writing, women's representation tended to be a bit lower. Women's representation was best. There's one category where women actually have been the majority of nominees over the past 10 years, and that is costume design.
Oh, my God. It's such a stereotype, though.
Yes, and let's give credit to the wonderful work that is done by the women costume designers.
Absolutely.
But that is one area,
Right.
one. So that's been where women have had the greatest representation. Women have been 46% of the nominees in production design, so there's good representation there. But 0, as you pointed out, in cinematography, 0 in original score.
Wow.
1% of nominees, or actually less than 1%, but we had to round up, in visual effects, another technical category.
Sure.
And that's only because the first woman has been nominated this very year with the awards that are coming up. So the very highly technical fields tended to be near shutouts of women.
Sure.
And this really shows us where most of the work needs to be done. It's not that women can't do these jobs, it's that women are being shut out of the jobs.
Right. In editing, which is really, people don't think about editing, but it's so important, film editing. I mean, it can determine an entire picture, which is why many of the great directors insist on doing their own film editing. But in film editing, what was our percentage? Something like 16, 17%?
It was 17%.
Yeah.
The reason why this is important to look at all of these numbers, and particularly the non-acting categories, is that these numbers are a reflection of the underrepresentation of women in these fields and these behind the scenes roles in Hollywood. But these numbers and the lack of nominations for women in these categories also serve to perpetuate the underrepresentation of women in these categories.
Exactly.
Because when you are nominated, it raises your profile, it raises your prestige, it draws attention, even if you don't win. That's why we looked at the whole field of nominations.
I see.
So they reflect something that's happening in the field, but they also contribute to it continuing this way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so it's systemic, like racism and sexism are systemic. So it continues doing what it's always done, and then when cornered says, "But this is the way we've always done it,"
Right, exactly. So we need to shine a light on it in order to keep up the pressure and just the attention to it.
Right. I know that generally, in one of the previous Women's Media Center reports, that women make progress in terms of producing and directing more in documentaries than in feature films, because, first of all, documentaries have lower budgets, and the money guys don't want to trust girls with money, but also because of the perception of power. And thirdly, there's a third reason too, which is that women do documentaries because it's an idealistic, altruistic, thing to do. So where we make headway, it's in documentary short subject and in documentary feature and things like that. Now, not necessarily, I suppose, in the nominations and the awards, but in even getting the jobs to be the director or the producer. We made a little bit of headway, if you can find it there.
Yes, exactly, in documentaries, absolutely. And it is reflected a little bit in the Oscar nominations as well. And the nomination numbers do, in most categories, at least roughly reflect what's happening in the industry as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at research by the Center for the Study of Women in Television and Film,
right,
they approach it a little bit differently. They're looking at the 250 top grossing films in a given year, and then they analyze women's roles in front of the camera and behind the camera in those films. But they found that women in those films were 9% of directors, 11% of writers, whereas, with the Oscar nominations, women were 13% of the writers. So it's a rough analog.
It's a rough parallel, yeah. And
about 20% of producers, not many.
Yeah. It's depressing, but at least it's out. We've lifted the rock, and so everybody can see what was crawling
exactly
under the rock. I mean,
that is one of the huge important aspects of research like this.
Yeah, well, tell people how they can get a hold of it for free on the Women's Media Center website. Take it away.
Absolutely. For free on the Women's Media Center website. It's womensmediacenter.com, and it's right there on the front page.
Yeah, and it is the Oscars 10-year review of Oscars and gender report. So as people watch the Oscars, think of what goes on not only on the screen, but in fact behind it, because in fact that determines what goes on the screen as well. And
yes,
we've got to make change because it has a huge effect on people's lives, on kids' images of growing up and what a female person means and what a male person means. And it's an American great industry, and we've got to get this changed. So thanks for all your work, Barbara. Thanks for the wonderful work that you do on the features all the time on the website. And listeners, if you haven't checked out the Women's Media Center original content features all the time, really do. I have had features up there. It's a pleasure to be edited by Barbara Findlen, I can tell you. And the other features they're just news you just don't get anywhere else. So that's also available on womensmediacenter.com. Thank you, Barb, and thanks for being with us on Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you very much.
We have to take a break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, but I'll be back directly with a guest who is going to tell us about brain health for women. Doesn't your brain need to be healthy? Mine certainly does. So don't go away.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back. My next guest, Judy Brooks, is the executive producer and co-host of the PBS series Healing Quest. It's a series that focuses on the leading edge of complementary and alternative medicine, but gives viewers science-based information about all those new ways of achieving holistic wellness. Here is Judy Brooks. Judy, welcome to the program.
Hi, Robin. Thank you for having me. This is great.
Well,
good to hear your voice.
Good to hear yours. You are, of course, the executive producer and the co-host of the PBS series Healing Quest. Well, tell people in your own words what your baby Healing Quest is.
Well, thank you. Yes, the Healing Quest is a series on PBS stations across the country, and it's actually been licensed around the world. So we've been on in the UK and South Africa and Israel, and we launched Healing Quest on PBS, I think, in 2003, and it's on integrative health and natural approaches to wellness. So what we really focus on is prevention, as well as what are the steps that you can take. If you're dealing with a situation, then you might not want to be, using heavy-duty pharmaceutical drugs. Not that we are against that at all. It certainly have a place. But, our show really does focus on natural and integrative health.
Mm. And I did a taping for your show, which should air at some point around, started airing around February, March, but it will keep on airing. And in this case, it was about women, and it was about the brain. It was fascinating. I don't mean that I was fascinating.
You were fascinating.
No. I did my best. I did my best to keep up, but the idea for that particular show was terrific. And so, talk a little about that.
Well, thank you. Well, this season we have focused a lot on brain health, and we focused a lot on women's brain health because, as you know, more than anyone, better than anyone else, oftentimes women's brains or women's body parts in general don't get studied like men's do.
Yeah.
So we really wanted to shine some light in that area, and we approached it from a different aspect. We looked at women in the brain, and we looked at Project ALS, the Women in the Brains Project, which Regina Scully had introduced us to. Was really fascinating to us.
Yes.
That we just wanted to take a look and see that there's this group that is actually putting together meetings and organizing around events around this topic just to educate people. And
that's right.
Basically that's what we do on Healing Quest. Is our goal is to inform, educate, hopefully entertain, and enlighten them. But it's really about giving people information that they might not otherwise find. We focused a lot this season, as we said, on our lead story, and every episode this season was on the brain. But we actually looked at it in different ways. We looked at dancing in the brain, music in the brain.
Mm-hmm.
All of the ways that we can stimulate our brain, keep our brain healthy. We did a nutrition. Every episode has a nutrition tip or a cooking segment where we focus on healthy foods. And
right.
So this season, because we were focused on the brain, we had a nutrition tip with Dr. Nicholas Gonzalez on the brain and brain foods and all of the what are the best things we can do to keep our brain healthy.
Give my listeners a sample of what they should be eating.
Well, when we asked him, what is one of the best things you can do for your brain, he said, really, and this is very simple, but it's water and salt. You want to drink a good quality water, not necessarily your tap water, and certainly not the issues we're having with water on
in Flint.
Right now.
You don't want to, and nothing. You don't want to drink it if you're in Flint, Michigan, either.
No, you certainly don't.
And salt
and good Celtic sea salt or good sea salt because of the minerals, and we don't get those in our food like we used to because it's the unrefined salt
right.
where you actually have all of that good potassium and magnesium and the things that we need to fire those neurons, keep our brain healthy. And obviously fruits and vegetables,
right.
Even dairy. I mean, one of the things that we have been sold a bill of goods on is that low fat is good for us. Well, that's not true. I mean, low fat foods, we believe, and the people, the experts that we've talked to over the years say that is really responsible for a big part of the obesity epidemic that we have in this country.
Low fat foods.
Low fat. When you take the fat, the good fat out of food, really like low fat milk.
Right.
When you take the fat out, what you really have is sugar water. I mean, you don't really have the nutrients. So we focus on even raw milk and raw cheeses and butter. I mean, butter, and we've seen it. We've been talking about butter on the show for years as a good thing, and now we're seeing. I think Time Magazine came out with
that's right. Yes,
with the cover on butter is better.
That's right. But butter's reputation has been reclaimed. I couldn't be more ecstatic, of course. And the ghost of Julia Childs is spinning with ecstasy in her grave.
You're right about that. I mean, I don't know who wouldn't want that. But and healthy fats, meats, that are grass-fed, pasture-raised, so that you're getting that good healthy fat, because the brain is I think it's like 60% fat.
Yeah.
So you need coconut oil. Coconut oil is a really good substitute for. You can put it in your coffee. You can put it on your broccoli. You
right.
make your salad dressing. So there's a lot of ways to get those good healthy fats.
Well, what I really like about the program is that it is, although it is about holistic, medicine and wellness, it is not off there in the granola bin.
No.
It's not, to be perfectly arrogant in my speech here, it's not Birkenstock thinking. It is really principled and firmly grounded in science. And so you get the best of both worlds. I mean, and I really respect the balance that and the accessibility and warmth of the program.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and I have to give my partner and husband Roy Walkenhorst credit for that. I mean, he has his master's in journalism from Columbia, and so he's a journalist, and we stick to the facts.
And frankly, anything that has Regina Scully at all attached to it, like the Women in the Brain Project, is not only kosher but excellent and really good for women, because she is the founding mother of this program. Did you know that?
Yes. Of your program. Oh.
Yes, of Women's Media. I mean, she does these wonderful good things and then moves on and does more wonderful good things, and many people don't even know about it. I mean, she's basically a great documentary filmmaker, among other things. But so the Women in the Brain Project is her baby as well. And
you mentioned that you were on the show, and we loved getting to interview you, and it was just great to spend some time and hang out. And I loved your poetry, and we were able to get one of your poems into the piece that we did with you, which was, I think, a treat for everyone. So
Thank you.
Yes, I mean, I hope one of the things that we hear often is, gee, you're really a well-kept secret. Something, how come we don't know about you? We've been on the air for over, almost 15 years.
My God.
I know. And so we started out in this space as real, I mean, I will just say so myself, and that is pioneers, really.
You did.
And now what is wonderful to see is how so much of this has moved from the edge. We used to say we were on the bleeding edge, to now it's really pretty much in the center, and people are really paying attention to their health in different ways.
It's wonderful.
And you have to embrace the whole mind, body, spirit, because it's all connected.
It is definitely the knee bone connected to the ankle bone. It is very true. The website, listeners, is www.healingquest.tv. www.healingquest.tv, and my guest has been Judy Brooks, and I thank you so much for your work and also for being with us on Women's Media Center Live today.
Well, thank you, Robin, and yes, they can check there to see what time they can see the show in their area.
That's right. Check your local listings and check the website. Thanks again.
Thanks so much for having me on the show.
And now it's time for the Surrealism Corner. I want to just start with a few ridiculous statistics, but since the Oscars are coming up and we've touched on what goes on behind the cameras, these are some stats from It's a Man's Celluloid World report from the Center for the Study of Women in Television and Film, and the report examines portrayals of female characters featured in the top 100 domestic grossing films of 2015. So last year, females comprised 22% of protagonists in the films considered. This represents an increase of 10 percentage points from 2014. The figure for 2015 is 6 percent points higher than in 2002 and represents a recent historical high. Whoop-dee-doo. Females accounted for 34% of major characters and 33% of all speaking characters. Seen but not heard. These figures represent more modest increases from 2014, although they're also historical highs. The percentage of female characters of color were largely unchanged, with a slight increase in black female characters, no change in the percentage of Latina characters, and a slight decrease in the percentage of Asian female characters. Further, Female characters of color were less likely than white females to be major characters. 27% of Black, Latina, Asian, and females of other ethnicities were major characters, whereas 38% of white females were major characters. This is what passes for, entertainment. Then there's Bernie Sanders, who is not as entertaining as Donald Trump, but hey. He has declared recently that he is a, quote, strong feminist and an honorary woman, in quotes. He said that Gloria Steinem, and he went on to say, everybody knows Gloria is one of the leading feminists in America, made me an honorary woman many, many years ago when she came to campaign for me. I don't know exactly what that meant, but I accepted it. I just bet he doesn't know what that means. So, of course, little facts would be handy here. It was Flo Kennedy who used that phrase. It was her phrase, honorary woman. And Gloria at that point was speaking together with Flo a lot and picked it up from her. Many of us, myself certainly one of them, were always unhappy with the phrase. And it took some time. And to this day, Gloria has been saying, at that period, we were suffering from terminal gratitude. So any man in office who voted even vaguely feminist, we just declared him an honorary woman. Always had a problem with that, but there were people who didn't have a problem with that. And as of now, and trotting it out now, well, really, I couldn't possibly reply to it better than already was done by NARAL President Elise Hogue, who said that Sanders doesn't seem to get it, that, quote, being a woman means understanding that we need equal pay, but that equal pay does not buy us much if we can't plan our families. Being a woman means knowing that undoing Citizens United does not secure our fundamental freedoms and restore abortion access under assault daily by anti-choice forces in this country. Being a woman means understanding that no man ever had to say, hey, guys, let's stand together and vote for a man, because the status quo in this country has supported that for over 200 years, close quote. And then she added, even as an honorary woman, Bernie Sanders doesn't quite get it. Good for her. And as long as we're on the campaigns, and for that matter still in the surrealism corner, one more note. A few days ago, 4 major progressive economists, plus Nobel Prize-winning economist and himself a strong progressive, Paul Krugman, the columnist for the New York Times, were publicly strongly critical of Gerald Friedman, a University of Massachusetts professor who has been a major source of the Sanders campaign's numbers. They called out Friedman's analysis, praising the Sanders economic program, and his figures on everything from 5.3% growth a year over the next decade to jobs projection, their point being that this is all voodoo mathematics and that it makes it very difficult, if this is coming from the left, it makes it very difficult for progressives to criticize voodoo mathematics coming from the right, as indeed that would make sense it does. Krugman winds up saying, in the past, the Sanders campaign has responded to critics by impugning the motives and saying they're all just establishment. But his point is that these 4 economists are also important figures in the progressive movement. One of them, for example, Alan Kreuger, has done groundbreaking research showing that moderate increases in the minimum wage do not cause major job loss. So these are the folks who ought to be your allies and your friends, not your adversaries. And Krugman advises that Sanders needs to crack down on his campaign's instinct to lash out and needs to disassociate himself from voodoo mathematics of the left, not just because of the political risks, but because getting real is or ought to be a core progressive value. And I would add that's getting real, not surreal. It's time for another short break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and I, and if you're a regular listener, you know this, am a mad, passionate lover of words and the English language. So our next guest is really fun because she is changing the face of dictionaries and, in turn, of language. So stay with us.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
And we're back again with my next guest, Erin McKean. She is the founder of the world's biggest online dictionary, wordnik.com. That's WORDNIK.com. And it's terrific. And before then, she was a lexicographer. That is, she was the editor-in-chief of American Dictionaries for Oxford University Press. But her goal is to make every word in the English language look upable, including the 52% of unique English words that are not currently in any dictionary. She's also the author of 3 books called Weird and Wonderful Words, and she's the best-selling author of a novel, The Secret Lives of Dresses. She's funny, she's smart, and she's with us today on Women's Media Center Live. Here is Erin McKean. Erin, welcome to Women's Media Center Live. Good to have you here.
Thanks so much. Good to be here.
Oh, it's a real thrill for me because, as the listeners know, I'm a word geek, nerd, freak, phile, Phile, lover. And particularly in love with the incredibly elastic and dynamic English language. And to speak to the woman who is the mother of wordnik.com is a real thrill. It's Wordnik, WORDNIK.com. And Erin is the founder and mother of the not-for-profit site that this is the online English dictionary and language resource, the largest in the world. It's both dictionary and thesaurus, and it's serious, and it's funny, and it's wonderful, and it's easily used, and I love it. So welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so happy to hear you love Wordnik.
Well,
I'm very fond of it.
Well, I should think so. Also, your biography says that when it says when you meet Erin, please tell her your favorite word. So I've been thinking, and I think of the many I could choose from, my favorite word is probably cerulean.
Oh, that's a beautiful word. It's one of the words that I think is as pretty as what it means is.
Exactly. It's a particular shade of blue for folks who don't know that. And it's just so musical on the tongue. You want to roll it around in your mouth like a cool marble on a hot day. Cerulean. Wow. Anyway, tell us about how you came to create Wordnik.
Well, before founding Wordnik, I was the editor-in-chief of American Dictionaries for Oxford University Press. And as that, I was lucky enough to talk to a lot of people like you who love words. And when they found out I worked on dictionary, almost always their first question was, is this word, whatever word they were thinking of, in the dictionary? Mm. And about 9 times out of 10, I had to tell them no. And it was very disappointing, both for them and for me, because if people love a word, they don't want to hear that some language authority, especially one like me, had judged their favorite word and found it wanting.
Aha. You mean, were these mostly new words that had come in because of the internet, or what were these words that were not in the dictionary? Modern words?
A lot of times they were modern words. A lot of times they were slangy words, which are often very old but just overlooked.
That's right.
A lot of times they were cool technical terms that were specific to their profession. A lot of times they were just kind of beautiful antiquarian curiosities. Mm-hmm. And it got me thinking, like, why in this age of the internet, when, electrons are essentially infinite, were we still making decisions based on how many characters we could jam into 2,000 sheets of paper? Right.
So you just went ahead and did it.
Right, and the thing that makes it possible is that people thought, well, how on earth are you going to write definitions for all these millions and millions of words? There was a study in Science that was published back in 2010 where they analyzed the Google Books corpus, and they found that about 52%, so more than half, of the unique words that they found in that corpus weren't listed in any dictionary.
Wow.
So, yeah, so there are all of these missing words out there. And one of the reasons they're missing is because it takes a long time to write a dictionary definition.
Of course it does. Many people don't even think about that, you know. I've known people who worked on precisely that, and synonymies, writing synonyms, dictionaries, and writing thesauri. And of course it's an art and a craft in itself, but people don't, they don't think how the definition got there, that there's a definition, and they don't think that a human being somehow, they don't even stop to think about it.
But most of the words you learned in your life, you never read a definition for. I don't know if you ever read a definition for cerulean. And in fact, all the people who just listened to us learned that word without looking it up.
That's right.
So instead of writing definitions for all these missing words, what we do at Wordnik is we try to find example sentences that use the word in a context that makes its meaning clear.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And we call these free-range definitions because they're just out in the wild in newspaper articles and transcripts and blogs and books. And we try to collect them so that you can learn the words that you're interested in naturally, the way you would in your normal life.
That's right. That's right. It's just fantastic. I have it in my menu. Right on my browser, so I can just click directly. You're on speed dial, as it were.
Awesome!
And the example sentences. There's a lot more information on the words. There's some etymology. That is how where the word comes from. There's much more than in a quote unquote normal dictionary, and much more expansive. And this is, of course, not where your wordnickiness, your expertise. Let's try that one. Ends, because you've also done books called The Weird and Wonderful Words, and then another one called More Weird and Wonderful Words, and then a third one called Totally Weird and Wonderful Words. I have to get that one. I have the other two. And then there's That's Amore, which is also a collection of words. So you are my soul sister.
There are always more wonderful words to find.
And before founding Wordnik, when you were between or after or before being the editor-in-chief of American Dictionaries for OUP, and that means a real high level of expertise. You were involved with HyperCard and Pearl and Omnimark, and so you've been an online expert with different formats as well. Yes.
I wouldn't call myself an expert. I would say that I know just enough programming to be a danger to myself and others. I love it, though. I think anyone who loves words should really take a good hard look at computer programming because it's magical. You assemble words on the screen, and they make things happen in the real world.
What a wonderful way to describe this. Go on.
And it's just like learning how to write a sonnet or probably more like sestinas. But
I'm one of the few people in the world you can just drop those two references on, and who know what you mean. But is it like a Petrarchan sonnet, or a Shakespearean sonnet, or a Spenserian sonnet? Which we've just lost.
I think it depends on what language you want to use. But you learn the conventions, and then you can create within the format, within the strictures, within the form. You can create just about anything.
Yes. How exciting. Yes, it's like there's a line by William Butler Yeats, the fascination of what's difficult.
Exactly.
Which I've always really loved. I'm sorry, listeners, if I lost half of my listeners by going off into the realm of Spenserian, Shakespearean, and Petrarchan sonnets. I apologize, but it's such a thrill to be speaking with somebody who refers to sonnets and sestinas as art forms. I can't help it. When did this fascination with words with you begin?
I've actually wanted to work on dictionaries since I was 8 years old.
Oh.
And no one ever told me no.
You just strayed into a dictionary and got hooked?
I actually saw an article in the newspaper about the second edition of the OED being 27 years, I think, behind schedule.
Yes.
And I cut the article out of the newspaper. I still have the clipping it just really made an impression on me. Not that it was so late, although dictionary projects are always late.
Sure.
But because I had never really considered that there were people who spent all day, every day, collecting words.
Wow. Of course. And to your 8-year-old mind, that was a thrill.
I thought that would be the best thing ever, because really it seemed like their job was mostly reading things, which was the thing I liked to do best.
I so totally understand. Were you the kind of kid who read under the covers with a flashlight?
Yes, and
Yeah.
I always had the maximum number of books checked out from the library that you were allowed to have.
Yeah, I grew up living across the street from a library. And it was,
what a dream.
Oh, my God. And, I went back as an adult to that library. In fact, they had a Robin Morgan Day, and so I went back to be honored. I was very excited. And it was such a small library as an adult, because my memory of it, of course, was as a small person, was that it was this cavernous, magical place. And when I went back, it was really a small, basically couple of rooms library in Mount Vernon, New York.
I think that your childhood library is always the one that takes on some kind of mythic significance.
Isn't it, though? It is. Well, Wordnik has a mythic significance, and I can't encourage you, all of you listeners, to go to wordnik.com more. There's a wonderful wordnik.com/about, which is a great abouts page, which is terrific at explaining what it's all about. So check it out. And for anything and everything that you need to know, just even for the fun of exploring it and popping words in and browsing through it, it's an absolute delight. Thank you for giving us wordnik.com, Erin, and for all the work you do. And thanks for being with us on Women's Media Center Live, too.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Time for one last brief pause here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and I'll be back in just a moment with, some fighting words.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back. Just in time for some fighting words. There are 2 items in fighting words this week. The first is so heartbreaking that I just couldn't see my way to ending the program on it, and so it's to be followed by something in a more hopeful note. But this first item really is a tragic one. An article in the New York Times recently covered a new crisis emerging as the Nigerian military liberates droves of women and girls from their Boko Haram captors. Many of the newly freed women and girls are being rejected now when they return to their communities because they had been raped by militants. They have been labeled Anoba, which means epidemics, or Boko Haram wives. This is just a killer. Some community members worry that these victims, these survivors, have been radicalized by Boko Haram and might try to recruit others to fight with the militant group. As many as 2,000 women and children, both girls and boys, but mostly girls, have been abducted by Boko Haram since 2012, according to the report. That includes the more than 200 girls taken from their secondary school in Chibok in 2014. That particular episode got wide coverage in the media with a Bring Back Our Girls campaign. But the government to this day has to concede that it still doesn't know those girls' whereabouts. But some of the women who've been released are pregnant. And, of course, there's a double whammy here because unsafe abortion is one of the most significant causes of maternal death and injury in Nigeria, where abortion is illegal except to save the life of the woman. And furthermore, procedures are often inaccessible even for women who meet the requirements, forcing them to seek out clandestine procedures. Some of the women who have been released have already given birth to children from rapists whose fathers were Boko Haram fighters. But when they're received back in the community, the reception is decidedly cold, often ostracism, because there's a feeling that the children have, quote, bad blood from their fathers. Even some of the released women, the survivors themselves, are uncertain about their own children. In one area, a community leader described the children as hyenas among dogs. So this situation is just getting worse and worse. As soldiers have scattered Boko Haram, fighters have sent suicide bombers throughout northeastern Nigeria and even across the border to other countries with escalating terrorist attacks. The UN estimates that the violence has prompted 2.8 million people to flee their homes. Many are now living in camps or in crowded homes with relatives, facing food shortages and a looming crisis made worse by low oil prices that are pinching the nation's budget. There's a status of critically food insecure that the UN has labeled this situation with. The skepticism over newly released female captives might be fueled by the increasing number of female suicide bombers who are carrying out attacks in northern Nigeria. It's believed that some female captives have been trained to fight or encouraged to become suicide bombers. I personally would add to that, saying it was their only way to escape, perhaps, and maybe they thought they could escape that way. Some combat experts believe that the female suicide bombers are brainwashed. Others believe that they're unaware and that the devices that they're wrapped in are remotely detonated. And a heartbreaking incident a week or so ago was a young girl in her late teens who decided not to detonate her device at a camp for displaced people near Maiduguri, indicating that she and two fellow bombers are aware of the consequences of their actions because she managed to get free from her vest and to throw it into the bush when she recognized her parents among the camp inhabitants that she was intending to blow up and had been sent to blow up. The other girls did explode their devices, and they killed and injured dozens. And each of the three girls wore their hair pulled away from their faces, the report says, in a traditional burial style for women that signals they were prepared to die. It's just a heartbreaker from the first abduction through the sexual slavery and imprisonment straight through to the death, or, if they're lucky, getting back to their communities and then being ostracized. On a note that is a little less depressing, because we need to fight again tomorrow, yet another day, but on another note, back in the USA, there's a happy result from the work that we've been doing and need to now increase. The vaccine introduced a decade ago to combat the sexually transmitted virus that causes cervical cancer has already reduced the virus's prevalence in teenage girls by almost 2/3. Those are luckier teenage girls. Even for women in their early 20s, a group with lower vaccination rates, the most dangerous strains of human papillomavirus, or HPV, have still been reduced by more than 1/3. And the news is a welcome energizer in this ongoing struggle to encourage HPV vaccination in the U.S. because despite the proven rate of effectiveness of the vaccine, immunization rates remain low. About 40% of girls and 20% of boys between age 13 and 17, and this is largely because of the implicit association of the vaccine with adolescent sexual activity, rather than with its explicit purpose, which is cancer prevention. Only Virginia, Rhode Island, and the District of Columbia require the vaccine. The religious right gets all in a fluster because it might mean, oh my God, teenagers are having sex, which, hello, they are anyway. And it might mean that by vaccinating them, we're approving and acknowledging that they have sex. Well, hello, it's better that they not die from cancer. In some countries, the vaccine is either mandatory or at least offered at school, and its cost is covered by national health care. That's obviously not the case in the U.S. And to try to shift the focus to the vaccine's purpose. Last month, dozens of cancer centers endorsed the vaccine as a safe, effective prevention strategy against types of cancer that resulted in 27,000 cases a year. So that's one that we're winning against the forces of superstition and anti-science religionists, and that's one that's saving lives of teenage girls. And that's it for today. This program is syndicated, but if you can't find the broadcast on a radio station in your area, you can always visit us at WMClive.com. There you can find the show, plus the archive of all our previous episodes. And we're at iTunes worldwide. There you can stream, download, and subscribe to the show's podcast. Also, be sure to find WMC Live on Facebook and Twitter. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Opinions expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. Regina K. Scully is our founding sponsor. Julie Burton, Women's Media Center President, is executive producer. And I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us. Don't forget to join us next week right here on Women's Media Center Live.
For the smartest talk about news, politics, sex, books, religion, race, and more, tune your radio to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacious, witty, provocative, informative, and fun. It's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on WMCLive.com. Talk radio with a brain.